Okay, Angelica, I think most people are in. Can you move us on to the next slide then? Hi, everyone. It's Andy Ronick again, as I'm sure you know. Please just remember our house rules. If you please can leave your microphones and your videos muted and off respectively. This is intended as a conversation, interactive session. So please do make comments or raise questions for Sylvia as we go through it. I will act as moderator, and then I'll try and find a convenient time just to interrupt Sylvia and pose your question or your comment. So please do interact with Sylvia. And in fact, we'd all appreciate hearing what people thinking or are having to say. Great, thanks then. Sylvia, can I hand over to you? Will you take over and share your screen?
I will do. Thank you, Andy. Let's share screen. There we go. How's that? Can you see that, Andy?
Yes, all clear. You're good to go.
Okay. Okay, shall I start now? You okay?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Okay, good morning, everybody who's now coming in and already in. Thank you for joining. I'm very interested to hear what your opinion is of my opinion. When I was asked to present by Andy, it happened to coincide. I was thinking about it and it happened to coincide with the Oscars, and I saw Lisa Minnelli in a wheelchair. And that caused me to remember all the things that she had done. And this one comes to mind because you will see later on why I think it's so relevant. So when you get lost between the moon and New York City, the best thing you can do is fall in love. So you might wonder what I'm making of that. Okay, can you see the screen? This is the cover of the National Skills Development Strategy. I'm particularly interested in that heading, Skills for Productive Citizenship for All. And that is what I want to follow when I'm asking these questions. What do the SETAs actually contribute? I think it's quite important to go back before we go forward when we ask these questions. Does the SETA actually contribute to productive citizenship for all? So we need to go back to 94. Were we shooting for the moon with what we wanted to do? Remember, we had a Reconstruction and Development Policy, 1994, and the Department of Education had a view in their white paper that we should integrate education and training. They motivated on the basis that we had to get past all the history of class and race and so on. And the way to do that was to put everybody under one integrated framework in terms of their education in order to achieve also a parity of esteem. But in 1998, the Minister of Labour, then Membetisi Mdladlana, he posted and gazetted the Skills Development Act. That is the act that created the SETA structures, I'm sure you're aware. And he also put in the Skills Development Levies Act. That was the funding mechanism. Funding was going to be paid to SARS. The SETA was to disperse to participating stakeholders. And that became a very big part of what SETAs did. They were involved in the dispersing of the skills development levy for participation in the SETA. They then would refund 50% originally. So down the left-hand side, you will see that I have put a little history just as our reminder to peg how things happened. 2008, we had the NQF Act. Now that followed some research on the NQF and the progress 2002, 2007, and the 2008 NQF Act was looking at integrating, now confirming an integration rather than having vocational education separate. So these are all sub-frameworks of the NQF. So we have 3 sub-frameworks of the NQF. Of most interest to us is obviously the QCTO and their regime. You talk again. Now, the whole intent of those 3 integrated frameworks was articulation between the various areas. However, then 2009, that comes together in terms of the actual departmental responsibility, and we have various ministers since then, but the most prominent and the most active has been Minister Nzimande. 2012, Minister Nzimande then introduced the STL reduction to 20%. Subsequently, 2013, he published the white paper. So the white paper gave us a really good integration of the entire educational and training framework. It's the first time it could be seen clearly. But come back to that 20%. That 20% refund, the SETAs dispersing only 20% for mandatory grant participation. That proves a disincentive to SMMEs. Suddenly the amount they get back doesn't in any way cover the amount of time and money they have to spend to participate. In talking to the NQF participants, BUSA is still fighting this 20% disincentive. It's still not agreed whether it should change, even though it's been through a range of Labour Court and so on. The minister actually lost eventually, but hasn't responded to that. And so they are trying to negotiate it at NEDLAC. The argument that is made is that the discretionary grant funding is now increased. But the but there is that the discretionary grant targets and what are implemented, not necessarily what the employers want or need. Just a note at the bottom there in yellow, under the QCTO. You will be well aware, I'm absolutely sure, as practitioners, that there's a raft of legacy qualifications that are due to fall away. And now we need to talk about legacy skills programs as well. In the area where I am, that is particularly important because working in food, there's a raft of skills programs existing, which are all the food safety skills programs. None of them would meet the QCTO requirements. And so the question is whether they will all fall away as well. So ASDSA, please watch out for the forthcoming presentation. We'll be dealing with exactly that. Now, just to come back to the PSET landscape and skills development and 20%. I'd be very interested to know, and if you put it into the chat, we could follow up on it. What is the percentage? How many stakeholders in your sector are actually participating? Do you know the level of participation in your SETA? Because it's never been high, and the 20% disincentive makes it less likely that stakeholders will participate. And also, we have a difficulty after the pandemic with companies just falling away altogether. So it'd be interesting to review what is the level of participation now. Based on my comment about what the employers actually want and need for their businesses. This is from a DHET publication, and you will see the level of participation in skills programs. SETAs are funding this compared to the learnerships. And what's interesting is that 80% of the workers, that's the employed people, actually achieve their certificate as compared to the unemployed, who also participate in skills programs but have a lesser achievement of certificates at the end. It tends to indicate that employers need, within their businesses, they need skills programs. So let's go on to the slide. Where are
Before
we
you go
now?
away from that, just a comment. You'll recall that last year the ASDSA did a survey of the mandatory grants and responses, and the information, and you'll recall we put out a report on it last year. It's not that different to this, what you've got here in terms of the interest in skills programs. It's the same picture.
Yes, in terms of my personal knowledge of companies, even I no longer work with corporates, but up to medium-sized companies, what they need are skills programs, because you can do it within the workplace with minimal disruption, and you get exactly what the company needs. For example, in food, you get the good manufacturing practices, you get the hazard control, you get everything you need, all of the occupational health and safety programs, a range of very small, short programs. None of them are 2 weeks, but they're essential for legal compliance. All of the fire, all of the first aid, all of those are not 2 weeks long, but they're essential for compliance. And I don't understand what we're going to do. So that's for you to discuss in the next session. I really look forward, because I'm absolutely genuinely afraid that there are negative consequences to allowing them to lapse. Maybe you
And the
call
2
them
weeks is
something
based
different.
on the on what QCTO will recognize. It's the minimum amount of learning time.
Yeah, yeah. Because the issue is, at the moment, they're funded by the SETA. And so the expense will now fall on the company if it's not, and also the employees won't benefit from the credits.
Comment from Diane Randall says, I have 25 companies and 8 SETAs, and all have told me they are not interested in applying for discretionary grants because of the irrelevance of interventions and lack of support with and cost of implementation.
That is actually 100% my experience. And of course, I don't know which SETA anybody else is working in, but my experience is being asked for something 3 times is hardly productive to the economy. You know, the paperwork, I think it's 38 pages, the contract that one gets sent in the particular SETA I was working with. 38 pages. Never mind the printing and so on. Absolutely horrendous, time consuming, totally negative, non-productive activity.
And a further comment
Okay.
from Diane, who says, 5 of my SMMEs have stopped submissions because of cost, which supports what you said earlier.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with one last week, and we sit there and say, okay, 20%, you know, what is your payroll? What is 1%? Is 20% of this 1%? You're going to get this amount back per quarter. And quite frankly, she just looked at me with her eyes wide and raised her eyebrows, and said, that makes no sense. Why would we do all that for all this administration for that? And not to misunderstand, this is not somebody who's anti-skills development. This is an African woman business owner who said to me, you know, I so want to help the young people with interns and so on, but the cost and the expense of it has just become totally unproductive. Anyway, I'll move on, because what we're saying very nicely introduces this slide. My view is we've entirely lost focus on skills development. And so we don't have that environment where people can get a short, sharp ability to learn something that enables them to either find employment or do something for themselves. And certainly in Africa and internationally, as you mentioned yesterday, Andy, it's very common to see people assisting themselves to earn an income. Before I move off the slide, I just want to ask everybody, please, would you click on this link when we finished and go to Statistics SA and access this latest QLFS survey. The media has been entirely misrepresenting the situation. There's a headline that came out saying jobs bloodbath. It's absolute nonsense. That's my polite word. The point is, when you read that Stats SA report, you will see that, in fact, the amount of people employed increased, but the amount of people coming into the labor force also increased in excess of that. So it's not a jobs bloodbath. Jobs actually increased and people in employment actually increased. But the people who had been previously discouraged, they certainly just simply weren't looking. They have come back into the labor force. Now, that is potentially a very good sign. It indicates they must have seen something that said, I've got a chance of getting this now. I'm coming back into the labor force. I'm looking for work again. That's one reason. I don't know the reasons. That requires more research to find out. But please go and look for it yourself. Yes, we really won't be able to employ people. We need to give them the skills to actually help themselves.
So Sylvia, I've put that link into the chat box for people to go and have a look at.
Okay, great.
A question from Michael Tiger. I'm not sure if you're able to answer. He says, have any of these issues that are being presented been discussed with the SETAs CEO forum and at NEDLAC? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge, I don't know. And certainly I haven't presented this to anybody. This is the first time I've presented it to ASDSA. I am assuming that NEDLAC would have those stats SA, and I'm assuming there's sufficient people there who would be focusing on it. My opinion is that we need the Department of Employment and Labor, and we need their knowledge and their views and their background to deal with these issues. I don't think the skills development people have, with all respect, have the sufficient background that the Department of Labor have in order to work with these issues.
And then just a final comment from me, Sylvia. And I see what you said here is no jobs and this massive unemployment and growing. And at the same time, we're hearing business say that they cannot find skilled workers. And this contrast is damning.
That's how I see it, Andy. You've expressed exactly. I couldn't put it better. We have focused in skills development on the detail of education and getting a certificate. That's all well and good. I don't wish to criticize that if we had that context. But we have a context of 75% of youth unemployed. That's not sustainable. One doesn't have to be an economist or a sociologist to understand you cannot have a society with 75% of your young people not actively employed in something, either employed or in education and so on. And that doesn't mean that they need to be in graduate 3 years, 4 years to qualify. They need something now. They need something that provides an income now. They need the skills now to be able to do something either for themselves or for somebody else. That's my very strong opinion. I'm totally frustrated by it. I must be entirely honest. I'll move on to the next one because what we've discussed.
We've got 10 minutes left, so just
okay, great. That's great. I've just got 3 slides, and they'll be very quick. This is why I'm saying, are we lost? Are we lost in administration? And my way of finding that out is to ask, what are the SETAs doing? And down the left-hand side there, you'll see services to the QCTO, credit providers, developed qualifications, and so on and so on. There were 3 pages of qualifications arrived in my inbox. Thank you to Morena, keeps me well updated. And I look at those qualifications and I think, who the hell prioritized these? I'm not even sure they even do get prioritized against what in the economic environment, what the requirement of employers are. I just don't think so. So when I write down all those things, what a SETA is doing, yes, they do some research and create a sector skills plan. It doesn't create employment. And they disperse the 20% back to a declining number of stakeholders. So that's hardly productive activity either. So the question is, what proportion of SETA activity actually contributes? Does it improve productivity? Does it grow the economy? Does it grow jobs? Does it improve service delivery? And I'm not talking about doing things by employers simply to get broad-based Black economic empowerment or any other sort of points. I think there's a disjuncture between what's happening and what the economy and the people in the real world actually require. And so
Sylvia, there's a question from John Arneson. He says, is Sylvia proposing the solution to SA unemployment lies with the SMMEs, i.e. SETAs need to make real changes to empower SMMEs to take up this role? What do you think?
I would say there's a few points out of that. Definitely, SMEs are where jobs growth comes from. I worked for, I don't know, nearly 20 years, I think, in corporate life. Corporates do not create employment. They create it simply to do what they want to do. They don't then exponentially create employment. In fact, they look to mechanize and reduce labor. Okay, so SMMEs are where employment grows. I think I told you about the lady who buys a chicken, cuts it up, sells it at lunchtime. She cooks it on the pavement. She sells it at lunchtime to the workers going past. She now employs 2 people. One's helping her cut, one's helping her cook and wash up the dishes and so on. Now that's how very small, micro. We're in Africa. We're not in Europe. I mean, I think this is what we need to lose. We need to whatever the word is, uncouple ourselves. We need SMMEs. I think we need the input of the Department of Employment and Labour, who have the labor now, the ASDSA, and they have the UIF money that they're funding for skills and to get people into work for the unemployed people who registered. So I think we need to refocus skills. We need to take skills and put skills with SMME, probably Department of Employment and Labour, and focus there. Education's fine, can carry on as it's doing, but it is not going to help us in terms of today getting people off the streets. Okay, so I think we lost in this maze of administration, policies, procedures, quality management. On my desktop, I've got QCTO policies to read. I think there's 6 of them. There's too much paper, too much strategy, too much policy, procedure, and quality management, entirely unproductive. None of them provide food on the table. And so right back to where I started.
Before you go on, just a comment from Angela Schultz, finding so much truth to what Sylvia is sharing, participation of SMMEs is so critical to boosting employment.
I'm glad to hear. Honestly, I think we may find we're all on the same page.
And I also like your last comment there, an obsession with qualifications. Which
it doesn't mean they're ready for work, and that's what employers are complaining about. They're not ready for work. If I can quickly share a recent example, intern gets picked up by the employer. Now they're going to do the intern. They've got the approval, DG from the SETA. We prepare all the documents, this 38-page contract and the employment, blah, 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 blah. You know how many there are. We get everything. SAPs do the authorization and blah, blah, certificates, everything off, ages of time to do and upload to the SETA. The intern worked for 1 month. And then the first day of the next month, she didn't pitch. And when they said, well, where are you? They said, oh, I've got a better job. Now, to me, that is a young person who has no idea how the labor market works. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't touch her with a barge pole to employ her personally. And that's not her fault. There's no sense that young people are work ready or understand how a contract works, nothing. I'm absolutely afraid to what we've done to young people after a very poor education. They don't have the ability to read or to do calculations. I'll get myself in a depression if I think about it. Anyway, back to where I started in terms of when we get lost between the moon. I think we are lost between the moon and administration. We're lost in a maze. I think we need to fall in love again with what we originally intended. We originally intended to skill the current workforce. There's no paper implied there. Train the unemployed for self-employment to look after themselves. And above all else, we need to build and create what we need for our society, not be directed from what anybody from Europe thinks we need. So that's my end, Andy. That's my very strongly held opinion.
Thanks. And then there are two further things if you can think about. Firstly, from Melanie Riches, the new SETA systems are so tedious and time consuming, really frustrating, and they are forcing us to work through those platforms, and there's an unhappy face, okay? And I think that's echoing what you're saying. And then Michael Tiger says, who on the Portfolio Committee in Parliament for Higher Education could question the DHET representatives on these issues that are being raised? Do they do a deep dive into the annual reports and performance and strategic plans of the DHET? What do you think?
I used to, before the pandemic, I used to go to attend the portfolio meetings, and I'm very, very tempted. I don't know what you guys think. I'd appreciate your opinion. I'm tempted to say we'd like to present to them, Andy, put a position to them, to the portfolio committee. I've had very good experiences with the committee in the past.
Okay.
Maybe the board would like to present to the portfolio committee the view of educated, highly experienced practitioners on the ground of what's actually happening.
Melanie agrees with it. She's saying, yeah, do it, please do. Look, I do think one of the things that the ASDSA should be doing is to try to have more impact at higher levels, try and get people to listen to what people on the ground know to be the reality. Then a comment from Diane Randall. Yes, thank you so very much for an enlightening summary. Spot on. So okay. I think we're at the end of our time. We've got 2 minutes left. If anybody's got any final comments or questions, please put them in now. In the meantime, while we're waiting on that to happen, if Angelique, you could share the CPD link. Comment from Janine. Thank you, Sylvia. From Felicity. Sylvia, that's a great idea. It's time to take seriously the role of SETAs. The youth needs a chance in the future. More thanks. Angela, again, I do see a small shift in the priorities of the DHET. Opening up funding for unaccredited short courses, but I don't think this will have the scaled impact that we're looking for in this country. But at least some, I'm losing, my screen is sliding up, at least some acknowledgement that the paper certificates usually demanded are not the be-all and end-all of skills development. So yes, I think there's a lot of, and there's a lot of comments from people saying this has been really helpful. Sylvia, thank you so much. This has been a really interesting and I guess slightly eye-opening presentation. It's greatly appreciated. Oh, last comment from Johan Maria. Is it not time that a new skills development system without the SETAs be designed and initiated?
Amen to that. I would certainly support that. Just as another positive to support all the comments, the QCTO research bulletin that's just come out, and I'm happy to share links with anybody. That actually is saying that the QCTO are realizing that all this administrative attempting to manage the providers is not working, and they want to move to a risk-based, I don't know what that means exactly, but a risk-based. So in other words, I think there's little drops of rain that are falling, that where we are isn't working, and we need to do something else.
Andy, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I'm not getting the link to work. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of the people who are in the meeting, and I will send the link to you guys afterwards.
Cool. Thanks, Angelique. Then everybody, we're just after 10. Thank you very much. Sylvia, again, thank you so much. And everybody, we're done.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks. Bye then, everyone.
Bye.